Please give a warm welcome to Tom Marcicano, who will facilitate us through this webinar.
Hi, everybody. Hi, nice to be here. Nice to know that we are together again. It's really great to be here. Good afternoon. Welcome to all our visitors, some visitors from quite far. That's great. Lovely to have you here. And we're going to talk today about building your business case for change management. You know, I cannot tell you how many times I have seen and heard change managers with the best intentions get very disheartened because they struggle with getting the support they need for change management that they propose to their steercos, their project steering boards, their project managers, the project groups. So we should never forget as change management practitioners that just because you and I can see the fantastic benefits that good change management can do for an organization or a project, that everybody else does. It's not like that. We're going to have to produce the case and present the case that shows why we should be doing change management on this project. If you don't build the business case for doing change management on the project, then you should not be surprised that we can struggle with getting that support later on. So today we talk about building your case for change management. This is not making the case. That's the topic of perhaps the next webinar or a future webinar. This is about the formal business case document that tells the story of the value of change management. It's really what we're about. We're telling the story of why it's so important to do change management on our project. Today I'm assisted by Nicholas and Jovan. Nick is keeping an eye on the chat box and in Zoom, and he'll chime in your questions. Jovan will run our polls, so we have the opportunity here. So you have the opportunity here to contribute to this session. Our polls will be run with Mentimeter, and you can access them on menti.com, and Nick will help you on that one too. You can open up one in your computer. You can open up the Zoom in the computer, Menti on your phone. That's cool. Just go to menti.com, and we will tee up the polls so that we can hear what you've got to say too. You just switch between them. So here we go with our agenda for today. So we got three main sections we're going to deal with. The first one is what is a business case? What defines the business case? And we're going to look at 4 phrases that make up the business case, especially from our perspective as change management, and connect that to change management. Then we're gonna visit the 4 challenges or the 4 objections that we very often hear when people are presented with the case for change management, for doing change management, and we'll see how the business case can address these objections right up front. Then we'll go section by section. We'll go through 8 different sections of the business case, and what does that mean for change management as we go through each of those sections. The business cases are drawn up for a purpose, for a specific initiative. You know, we may be introducing a new customer relationship management, or we're doing digitization, or there's a culture change, or there's a relocation to different offices, or we're rejigging the offices as a result of COVID-19. We'll look at the specifics of applying change management on a project. And that's really what this comes to. It's being very, very specific. But before we get going, I'd like to take a poll. And of course, as you know, you get into menti.com. And here's the first one. What is your expertise level with formal business cases? So get into menti.com when you're asked for the code 961109, 961109, and then you can go ahead and chime in your answers. What is your expertise level with formal business cases? And you've got a choice anywhere from, you know, I'm using Dreyfus level of proficiencies, anywhere from expert, proficient, competent, advanced beginner, or complete novice at it. So cast your vote and let us know where you land on this. Okay, so we're getting a good spread here. We're getting a spread. There's quite a few people who know this game of writing business cases. You've had to do it before on your projects, maybe on change management itself. But we also have a lot of novices. So welcome to the novices. Oh, we've got a couple of experts too. They'll be able to tell us how to do it. Okay, that's cool. Our webinar will help you understand how this can be a really powerful tool to help you connect and get change management going on your project. So keep your browser open. Thank you for your input. Keep your browser open. We'll be coming back with more questions. Cool. Okay, so what is the business case? And we're going to tee this up with, this is the agenda, if you like, for today. Let's begin with the definition of the business case. I'm going to start this off with kind of 4 statements, and you can see them there on the left of your slide there. It's a business case is about capturing the reasoning for doing this, initiating the project or the task, convincing the decision makers or the decision takers to actually take action. So the business case is really capturing this. So, and it is often a formal document. I mean, it could be a Word document, it could be a PowerPoint presentation, however your organization prefers to see these. And they can vary anywhere from, a couple of pages to 50, 60 pages. It all depends. It really depends on the project. It depends on the size of the change. So we'll then take a look at certain sections of the business case. You'll see on the right-hand side over there, we'll be looking at, obviously, the executive summary is extremely important. What is the situation and how we assessed it, the solution design, the project description, and so on. Those are the big topics that we are going to look at one by one through this afternoon, and just get an understanding of what we should be putting in that, and why we're actually using that structure. There's a very important reason why we are using that structure. So we'll look at these 4 phrases that make up the definition of the business case. And the first is the business case is captures the reasoning, the reason for doing this. Why do we want to do change management? We've got to tee that up straight away, because people need to understand, why are we even proposing this? Because it captures the people-dependent benefits. And that's what we're really trying to drive at. We're trying to drive at capturing the people-dependent benefits of this change, whatever that change may be. And of course, the project results will depend on the adoption and the usage of the change that we're making, of the new technology, of the new processes. And of course, that will drive, by doing the project, we drive the employee adoption and usage. But of course, the employee adoption and usage is driving the results and getting us to the point where we get the results. And this is really a frustrating formula, and I've seen this expressed so many times. You can have this perfectly designed solution with a perfectly managed project, and we're coming in on budget with the delivery, and we're coming on time with the delivery, but we're not getting anybody to adopt this. Nobody's really using this. And if that's the case, we cannot achieve the success. It doesn't equal the success achievement of the results. We're going to get something different to that. So there's more to that. There's more to a change. There's more to a project than just setting it up right and building it correctly and implementing it correctly. So when we talk about organizational change, I'll sort of put this in a graphic, if you like. We talk about organizational change. We talk at the sort of 10,000 meter level very often. So if I had to ask somebody now, what change are you busy with right now? The kinds of answers that I typically get likely to be sort of, well, we're doing digitization, we're doing a reorganization, we've got some continuous improvement programs running, we've got an ERP, maybe we're moving people around, we may be even doing an agile deployment or some sort of process re-engineering. And that's kind of like the 10,000 meter view. It's high level, it's right at the top. But the reality is a little bit different, isn't it? The reality is that individuals need to move from where they are, their current state, to their future state. And not everyone makes this transition. We could get people being left behind in the transition area or even in the future state. And we end up with what we call the Swiss cheese of the future state, where we've got these holes where people aren't exactly on board. And of course, this has consequences, especially for the results that we're going to get from the change we're making. And these are some of the consequences we could get. We could get lower return on investment. We could get the improvement not really being achieved that we want to see. And we get something we're really not expecting or what we hope for. And that clearly is not where we want to be. So this is the reasoning for applying change management. And this will help us understand this definition. So for the second statement, which is about initiating the project or the task, we're considering that we can do these in projects. Can we do this work in projects? Absolutely. But when we come to describing it, we sort of tend to describe it's to implement a CRM, it's to digitize. This is what the project is trying to achieve. We want to do things, okay? And what we see is that we need to apply change management on that so that we can get that adoption and usage by the people. So applying change management really means getting the results. And this is the really important part. It's drawing this logical link between what we're trying to do with our project, with our initiative, and getting the results at the end. And in between that is making sure that we get the people to come along. And that's really that's how we're going to be defining the change management from the purposes of the business case. So applying change management really means using a structured approach. It's with dedicated resources. And of course, importantly, we want to integrate that into the project plan. There's only one project. There's only one plan. Our work stream needs to integrate into that. So the next task, if you like, the next area is to convince the decision makers or the decision takers to actually come on board with this and give us the support. And when we define the value of change management, we really are selling change management to all these audiences. Yeah, they could be the senior leaders, the project teams, the executive team, the frontline managers. These are all the different audiences that we are going to be collaborating with and expecting to get support from. And we achieve this by getting the buy-in, which leads to the mindset that leads to the dedicated approach that we're going to be using, which finally leads to the allocation of resources. So it's not a case of just walking in and saying, I need this because we need to do change management. We need to take our audience through that process, if you like, where they get that mindset that says, well, we really need this if we're wanting to see something. And there's a bit of a bonus in this. In many cases, you're convincing them because you're solving their problem. We're not solving ours. We're solving their problem. And we need to show how change management is there to solve their problem or their challenge. So I want to poll again because I'd like to see your thoughts on this particular one. So we're going back to the Menti. All right, so it's menti.com. And here's the question. What are the problems, if you want, what are the problems or opportunities you can solve for decision makers by applying change management? What do you think we could do? I want you to reflect on this bit and just chime out what can we solve for them? What are their problems that we can solve with great change management? Is it something to do with the processes? Is it something, what can we do? So please, let's see. Okay, we can deal with resistance. That's pretty good. Yep, we can expect resistance, right? Normal, human, natural reaction to change. We can stop the project from being stalled. We can mitigate that resistance, absolutely. Yeah, adopting the change creates support for the change. Smoother adoption of processes, absolutely. Dramatically improve the adoption. Yeah, so that adoption is really, really important. We really like to see that. Okay, taking ownership, that's really powerful. Getting the people who are involved and who are mandating this change to take the ownership, to take the accountability, to minimize the resistance in employees, help the change not to fail, that's a big point too. I mean, changes fail, we know they do, without any help to move them along. They don't just automatically see their results. So these are the kinds of problems that we can solve with change management. And Al, thank you for chiming them in. I'm just seeing lots of them coming in. Adoption and implementation, ensuring a no surprise implementation. Absolutely. Getting what we plan to, getting what we plan to get. Yeah, absolutely. So thank you for that. So the last piece is about the taking of action. It relates to taking action. Here you can specify the actions required, like what you see, a bit like what you see on the side there. commitment to apply the change management with some dedicated budget, with integrating it into the plan. These are the kinds of actions that we are going to be taking as change managers to build that case and to build the change management and to connect the change management in with the change itself. So today we're talking about a specific business case. We're not being general here. We're talking about a specific business case, that which requests change management. So it's about the case of you asking for change management support in this project. And, we've often come across, I've heard some of these before, and I'm going to ask you in a minute to chime in how many you've heard of these. The 4 challenges or the objections that we get when you're presenting people with the ask for change management support, so that we can focus the value of change management on the project. We'll consider these 4 challenges that we need to address. And here they are. I've teed them up for you. They're on the left-hand side over there. What does it really mean to apply change management on a project? You could get that as an objection. Oh, I don't see the value of change management. Change management seems soft and fuzzy. It's the pink and fluffy. Change management looks different than what I'm accustomed to speaking. So we'll work together to understand how your business case can address all 4 of these. But first, let's see how prevalent these objections are in your experience. So I've teed up a new poll, and I can see people have already started answering. Wow, that's really quick. Okay, let's go. I experience these objections. So you've got a choice there, anywhere from never to all the time. So what does it really mean to apply change management on a project? Have you never seen this? Has no one ever raised this as an objection, or do you get this all the time? Let's chime in on this one. Okay, popular one. Yeah, change management, soft and fuzzy, the pink and fluffy. Okay, excellent. So we're seeing quite a few people saying, yeah, so you're getting a lot of it. There's a lot in the soft and fuzzy coming out. It's a pretty high average of 3.2 there. So most people are hearing this, and you can see how that sort of slopes towards the right-hand side. Okay, and we've got a bit of a mix there for I don't see the value of change management. What does it really mean to apply change management? Getting quite a few people asking that question too. There's a lot of volume there. A lot of people get that, okay, some of the time. So sort of in the middle there, it's about some of the time. There are a lot of people also saying some of the time change management looks different to what I'm accustomed to, meaning I don't understand more or less what you're trying to communicate with me. Okay, cool. Thanks for participating in that. So you can see across the board, all of us or some of us experiencing either one or more of these as the typical objections that we get when we go there and say, please give us the support on the change management. So what does it really mean to apply change management on a project? Here are 2 sections that we need to deal with in the business case when we come to building that. And that really address these objections. And the project description really is about describing what the change is about, the scope of it, how big, how many people are affected by it, what are the objectives that we're trying to achieve. It describes what change management really is about. And the solution design is going to pull out and go to a more granular level and a more detailed level, addressing the work streams, what we're actually going to be doing, the communications and the training and the sponsor work and the milestones and the deliverables. And that's what you would want to see in the sort of solution description part of the business case. So we package change management to help make it clear what it means to do change management on the project. And that's one of the key outcomes of doing a good business case, is that you make it clear to me, what is this change management actually going to be doing for us in the situation? The second objection is I don't see the value of change management. We'll use the situational assessment and problem statement part of the business case, and we'll do that specifically, and we'll draw on the connection between the project promise, project promise, like Connor says, like, what is the project promising to deliver, and the people side of change. We need to make that connection, and we'll do that in that situational assessment and problem statement. We also show the dependencies between the benefit realization and the value creation. We've got to show what, we're going to get these benefits coming out, but how does that actually create value for us? And that's an element we're going to have to focus on as well. Yeah, change management seems soft and fuzzy, pink and fluffy. And I think most of us in the audience here who are doing the change management know that change management is not standing on the beach and singing your favorite feel-good song, your kumbaya. It isn't going to happen that way. If you invest the time and the energy to build a strong, solid business case, you actually address this objection face on. You get it straight up because we're going to show exactly the connection here. And by bringing structure and formality to the process, you can address this issue head on. So the final issue, that of the, it looks a little bit different to what I'm used to or accustomed to hearing. We'll use the business case as a familiar structure. This is a familiar structure to a lot of people in your organization. You're not coming in with something that's new that I need to sort of get my head around. I know what a business case looks like. You've done it in the usual structure, but you're using parts of it to help build our case for doing change management on the project. And there's a couple of areas that we're going to be visiting when we do this: the description, the scope, the cost benefit analysis. We're going to come out with milestones that will align these milestones with what's going on from a project perspective and the timelines and so on. So really what we're doing here is we are translating this change management in a way that resonates with the crux of the issue here. And I always go back to Mandela on this one because that's such a powerful statement. If you talk to a man in a language he understands, that goes to his head. If you talk to him in his language, it goes to his heart. And we really need to get to the heart of the audience that we're talking or we're presenting to. And it's about speaking the language of your audience, not the change management techno-talk, but their speak. And the business case is loaded with their language. It's loaded with the kind of stuff that CEOs want to see, COOs want to see, CIOs. And that's how we should keep it that way. So it's almost like this is something we've got to keep at the back of our minds. Whenever we're putting stuff down in our business case, let's check back to this. Are we really speaking their language? Okay, so we've spoken about the 4 challenges and how we're going to tee that up within the business case. Let's look at a section by section view. And we've spoken about the definition of the business case from a change management perspective as well. We got to look at those areas that you would want to include that help focus the discussion on doing change management. And if you're pretty new to this kind of work and need a tool to help you, there are tools to help you build this business case. We'll talk about that later. You can contact us and we can help you get this. So we have got some things that are set up that can actually help you fast track to building this business case and producing this good statement of the need for change management for your particular project. So here we go. We'll take this section by section. Okay, so let's look at the executive summary. Now, the executive summary is the first section, but it's not the first section to finish. It's a concise, it's got the vital information. It's really, really important to summarize the other sections here. And this can become quite a challenge because this is typically a half-a-page summary, maybe a bit longer, and it gets really tough to bring it down to that. But my tip is that this is completed last. You can start off at first. You may want to start off with let's lay down the bottom line, something like, this project aims to achieve the following outcomes, and we need to do change management on this project because without the affected people adopting, using, and becoming really proficient at the new way of doing things, we're not going to get the results. We cannot expect to meet the objectives. And that, you can leave it at that because that's like where we're going to, and then we move on and we'll come back to completing that later on. So you know, in a sense, you are kind of going to complete the other sections and then come back with the sound bites. You're going to grab the sound bites from each of the sections, summarize it into the executive summary. So for these busy executives that don't have a lot of time to read the detail or trust that we've got the detail right, they'll go focus straight to the executive summary. Give me the bottom line. What are we talking about? What is this change management going to do for me in my project? Is really what that executive summary is all about. Okay, the next one is the situational assessment and the problem statement, if you like. This talks to a section here where we are directly connecting the promise of the project, the benefits that it's going to deliver, the outcomes, the output, the savings, the revenue, whatever it is, to the people side of the change. And here comes the essence of what we are proposing here. So what we aspire to deliver, you know, it must be inherently tied to getting the people on board. And that's where we're going to be focusing our discussion here. On the right, you would see, of course, on the right side, you see some indicators of how we get there. And this info is usually available in the project documentation. You don't need to go and invent this typically. You would extract this information from project documentation that already addresses the benefits and the objectives, addresses, you know, the dependencies that we are going to need to take care of. This second step is not sorry, I beg your pardon. The second step in this process, identifying the individuals and the groups, that's not really apparent to many involved in the project. You know, your rendition of the business case is really illuminating to them, and it's showing to them who are the people who need to change if we want this change to be successful. Here, the realization of the project is more than, it's more than just a system or a structural change. You know, here you create the inventory, if you like, of who must change. And this is probably the area where you're going to be adding quite a bit into the business case. The third bit about showing the dependencies shows the dependencies of the results to adoption and usage. And this is a good place to introduce the concept of speed of adoption. You know, how quickly, how long do we wait before people sort of adopt this change? The utilization, how will they use it? When will they use it? How many will use it? And of course, the proficiency, how well will they use it? And we'll come back to these topics again in more detail, but it's a good place to introduce those because those end up being the measurables of change. And if you can end up with proposing some measurables and sort of integrate that into a timeline in your business case, that is speaking the kind of language that executives really would like to hear. It's when you're going to do what and what results do I see for. Let me see if I can illustrate this sort of a little bit diagrammatically. So as we move from that current to the future state, of course, has expectations. There's a promise there. What's the promise? The promise of the results, the outcomes, the value coming out of this change. And your analysis, and that's fine. I mean, that you're going to get typically from the project documentation. But your analysis as change manager is going to go one step further. We're going to look at the people side, you know, the individuals that have to change, the groups that have to change. And you're showing what the new behaviors need to be to get those results. So this is just an extension of, if you like, that table where you're mapping out what the project's delivering and you're describing the new behaviors, the processes, the tools we're going to be using or need to be used to get the result. So let me test something here. I'd like to hear from you. So here comes another poll, and the question here is, and this is a bit of a, let's see. How many times should you mention change management in your situational analysis and problem statement? How many times we should, in this particular part of the business case, how many times should we be talking or saying the words change management based on what we've just said? What do you think? Is it none? Is it many? Limited? Okay, I'm seeing limited coming in. How many times would you would we really even need to say the words change management? As little as possible, talking in their language, and in their language may not be change management. All right, 0 times. Yeah, none, once. Yeah, so that's getting interesting. Okay, limited is coming up quite often. Okay. Okay, so there's quite a spread here of opinions. Turns out that actually this is the one section in your business case where you probably do not want to mention the words change management. Because what you're trying to do here is you're just talking about the necessity to get the people and the groups of people to change to get the results. So we're going to be talking about the behaviors. We're going to be talking about, the processes that are changing, the tools that they're going to need to deliver those outcomes, to deliver the value. And we don't need to, at this point, be talking about change management per se. And that's the point I'm trying to make here. Yeah, we don't need to mention the change management here. These are about the changes here. So we talk about dependence here, and this really is the goal, is to be very specific. In this section here, you're going to get very specific about what the outcomes are dependent on in terms of the changes people have to make. So this is a fairly simple table, but it's important what goes in on that right-hand side of the table. And that would be the sort of things that you would capture and map out in your business case. So the third section is the project description. We describe what applying change management to the initiative is going to mean in this section. It's really at a high level. We're at a high level here. And the reality is that the project, the project's going to go on anyway, regardless. Regardless, whether we're going to do change management on the project or not, it's most likely the project is going to continue. I've hardly ever seen a change manager stop a project. No, the project will go on. People will try to make the change. There's energy, there's commitment. We've got to move forward. What we're doing here, though, is describing how the people connect to the project and how we're going to make them part of the deliverable. I'm going to give you a snapshot of the pieces involved in this. So here, pretty straightforward diagram, but quite revealing and very powerful, I find, when I'm having this kind of discussion, especially with executives. So this is really the high level. So for whatever, the ERP change, the new culture, the office move, whatever it is, digitization, the technical side is about the designing, the developing, and the delivery of that change. The people side is about the embracing, the adopting, and using. It's getting the people to embrace this change, to use it, to get good at it, to use that in a really powerful way. And this is the difference between, if you like, the technical side of the change that's going on and the people side of the change that we're really going to be focusing on. And it's a powerful way to present that these two really are what's going to determine the results, the outcomes, the success of what we're trying to deliver here. So our focus, of course, will be on the people side, and that's what we're going to be emphasizing. The second piece of the description is in terms of things like the scope. And here we bring out some concrete examples you can pull into the business case. Yeah, here is what in scope means from a change management point of view. It's identifying and defining the individuals who need to change, creating that change management strategy. You'll pull that one out as well. Developing customized, scaled, and targeted best practice plans. This is the kind of stuff that's in scope for us as change managers. What's out of scope, what shouldn't be expected of us, and what we really should not be delivering from a change management perspective is actually defining the change at hand. I say this very often when I'm doing programs with practitioners. Our work really starts after the change has been defined. When we know what the change is at hand, then we can start planning for it we can start building the strategies to help the people come along. And also what's out of scope for us is, of course, creating the technical solution. So we're going to focus on what's in scope, and we're going to make it clear in the scope part of the business case what we're responsible for. And we're sort of, you know, if I relate this to one of the key assessments we use at the beginning of a change, which is the process change triangle, we're really focused on the bottom right. Okay, we're going to be focusing on the people side, the project management and the leadership side. We're not focused on, of course, we'll take a view of it and we'll make a comment on it, but it's not our accountability to deliver the sponsorship. It's not our accountability to deliver the project management if we're doing just the change management business case. Of course, we need to integrate when we've completed this with the rest of the business case. So let's look at the objectives now. So the project objectives. Here is another 3 important objectives of change management in the project context. The first is, you know, we've mentioned this before, but it's worth repeating because here we're really focusing on the adoption and the usage of the solution to drive the project results and outcomes. So we're going to be describing in those terms. We're going to create a customized and scaled approach. And customizing and scaling are really, really important. You know, the experienced practitioners, of course, know that change management is not cookie cutting. It's not a cookie cutter exercise. It's not the same comms for everybody. It's not the same way. It's not the same training. It's not the same way in which people are going to resist. We're going to have to customize our plans, and we make people aware of that in this business case context here. And of course, we're going to align the approach to the project life cycle and the milestones. We're not just running off on our own mission here. And of course, this could become extremely important. It's especially important when we're doing this in the agile context, when you're doing multiple repetitions of developments and improvements. Then, of course, we want to create the deliverables. And yeah, the deliverables for change management are the strategy and the 5 plans that support this achievement of the goal, and the milestones that people are going to have to achieve to actually change. And of course, ADCAR are very useful for delivering on that. And we would describe the change management objectives in this way. So here, this section here, when we get into the solution description, we're getting into more detail here. This is where we're going to really start to flesh out some of the detail of what it is we're going to be doing in change management. This does not replace the change management strategy in the plans, but it summarizes them. That's really what's happening here. You're summarizing the strategies and plans and putting this in a format that is kind of digestible for those who want to see the case for doing change management. And so the tip here is to use the language and the frameworks that are familiar to your reader. Again, coming back, we're coming back to the basics here. The language and the frameworks that are familiar to them. And of course, what would they be familiar with? People reading this business case could be familiar with functional designs, with data layouts, with the technical kind of stuff. So we would want to link to those and sort of put in there actions which are change management actions. So the inputs to this, I'll try to lay this out sort of diagrammatically. The inputs to this is the defined change. The work streams get presented as inputs. You're just reflecting what has already been defined. You're not redefining in this particular area. But then you're mapping out that there's an individual change management work stream and there's an organizational change management work stream. And we're presenting these so that people can see that we're needing to change. If we want to get the results here, it's about individuals achieving their milestones of changing, moving to their future, but we're also helping the organization as a whole move to its future. On the top one, of course, ADCAR works well here. And of course, with the bottom one, we're going to be using the phase process. So we're using the processes and method that we're quite familiar with if you're using the ProSci method. The outputs, of course, at the individual level, it's about people adopting and using the change. And at the project level, it's focused on results and outcomes. So we still stay focused on getting the results that we're looking for. So let's, I want to break this down into a little bit more detail. Let's take that and decompose a little bit of that. And I'll start with mapping out ADKAR along the top. And I'm now going to start to define the milestones of successful individual transitions. So I'm describing what people need to achieve. You know, remember that milestones describe an outcome. They don't describe the activity. So the question becomes, well, what is sufficient awareness for this change? What would sufficient desire to support the change be? When would we get there? So it's about achieving the milestones, those outputs. So we use ADKAR, and we can map this out. We actually use this kind of mapping timeline chart in an advanced immersion class that we do, an advanced immersion program, where we start mapping it out and we dive deeper into actually getting to the point where we're understanding what milestones have to be achieved when. Then what we do, so we'll start by putting we'll put the project timelines with the go live. So you can see the project phases. We'll put those on, and we'll tee that up against the months or the weeks or whatever. So we map the project phases and then show where the go live happens. And then what we do is we start identifying all the impacted groups and identifying when they should be achieving their milestones. And we'll continue to do this and create this map so that you can see from a achievement perspective what people have to achieve and when they have to achieve this. This, of course, is going to drive the action plans that we've already started thinking about, and the action plans that we're going to be putting together. So I've kind of presented a diagram here of when the milestones need to be achieved for the impacted groups, and that will drive that'll drive the actions that we're going to take. So from the organizational perspective, the deliverables would be the next piece, and the deliverables talk to the activities that we take at an organizational level. So we describe our deliverables using the three-phase process, which some of you may be quite familiar with. And of course, in phase one, we're going to be creating the change management strategy and the readiness assessments. So we describe that we'll be doing that. And then in phase two, when we're coming to actually planning the action, there'll be 5 action plans that we develop, and then we're going to integrate all of those into the overall project plan. And that would be the activity that we would take as change managers in the second phase. And in the third phase, it's all about getting adoption and usage, measuring how people are achieving the change, sustaining it, dealing with resistance, and of course, ultimately catching the lessons learned for that. And that could be what we describe as the solution for change management in the solution description part of the business case. And you can see from this diagram that I've mapped out here, we're again coming back to ADKAR, we've got how those action plans will drive the milestones. And I've seen some really powerful renditions of this where people are showing quite clearly why they are taking so much action in the communications, etc., or whatever that element is, because they're driving the particular milestone. So we're bringing together those 5 action plans and the ADKAR elements that they build. You can get as detailed as you like here. And, for example, you could see as an example of a Gantt chart that you could include in this section and could be quite useful. It really talks to, satisfy project managers, this sort of thing, and would satisfy other very detail-focused people. They'd like to see the detail, can tell me exactly when we're doing what. You may need to get to this level depending on your organization, what it's looking for, and what kind of data they want to see to give you the support. And of course, this ends up looking like a pretty usual project plan at the end of the day. I mean, there should be, when you look at this and you look at a standard project plan coming out, there's going to be not much difference in its structure. Of course, the content's different. Now, of course, the final piece in the solution description is about the roles involved. And, you know, we know as change managers that there are many roles involved in change management. It's not just about us doing the work. We know that the front line is going to have to adopt and use the change, that the executives are going to have to be active and visible. They're going to have to build a coalition of executive support. They're going to have to communicate directly. That's what the ABC is all about. And we know the middle managers, the first line managers and so on, they're going to have to be the supermen in terms of communicating and doing resistance management and coaching their people, staying in touch with the project team, telling them how it's going. So these are all roles that are part of doing good change management. And of course, the change managers, us, are going to provide the structure and enable all of this leadership to take place. We're going to work with the project team, so there's an integration focus that we have to apply. And of course, we may use and may need to use subject matter experts for their experience and expertise. So what we're doing here, and of course, all of these tools and stuff you've got in your e-toolkit, if you're one of the, if you're a practitioner, but there's also lots of articles that talk about this, and this could be featured in one of our future webinars. If this is a particular point of interest for you, we're going to give you an opportunity to express that later on, and we'll sort of try to address the areas that you want to see more about and to go deeper on. So I'd like to take a poll now again to gauge how confident, with all of this that we've discussed, how confident are you in your ability to define change management in terms of these work streams, milestones, and deliverables? So here again, go back to thementi.com. Okay, all right, coming in, somewhat confident, cool. All right, how confident are you that you, with all of this that we've discussed, that you could really go and start to define these? Excellent. Yeah, okay, very confident, good, thank you. This is good. Okay, so we're getting results out of this, and that's really good. Thank you very much for that. So, and if, of course, you need more, you know where to come to ask for help and get some more tools and stuff like that. But you can see already you've got a lot as a practitioner that you can apply. So we positioned these work streams and milestones and deliverables as key headings under the solution description section, because this really shows the reader what it means to apply change management. And that's really what this whole area is about, showing you what I mean by the application of change management. So the next section is about the cost-benefit analysis. And here we're going to have to show context here that, it's really a no-brainer. That's really what the objectives here is. It's going to be a no-brainer to support change management of this project. This is what we're trying to show here. And here the trick is to show balance and context. The perspective matters here. We begin with the investment and the ROI that we expect. So what are we investing in this project? What are we investing in this change? And what kind of return do we expect to get? Then after that, let's talk about the costs and the risks of doing or not doing change management. So we present both sides, if you like. It's like the scale. We're presenting both sides. What is the benefit, but what is the cost of achieving that benefit? And we are going to have to spend resources and money on change management. And what does the research show? What does the research show? Where do we spend our change management? Typically, this is taken from the best practice research. You may know this. Change management resource costs are normally the biggest line item. Training, communication costs, maybe some external consultants, change management materials, and so on. These are the big line items, the pieces that fit together in terms of how we would spend those resources. Now, there's no universal way of defining a budget. You know, I've seen many different approaches in different organizations. We could be going on an incremental or zero-based, or we could, you know, use clustering of cost items. So there's no real universal. But one thing is important that we need to keep in mind, that we should adjust the budget to match the situation. So, you know, whether it's the scope, the objectives, the timeline, something that is, you know, more or less, we're going to adjust this budget ask in the business case so that you're not only describing what the spend is for, but also the elements that have driven the amount that you're asking for. And so, you know, the more you can explain that, the more convincing your ask is going to be. Now, the benefits of change management, this is a whole section, the cost benefit analysis. It's a whole section, and one can get into quite a bit of detail here. And there's a lot that you can cover here. The more detail is available on how to build this. If this is an area you would like to dive into, we can make this a whole topic for a future webinar, if that's of interest to you. At the end of this webinar, we'll be asking you what, to call out the areas of change management that you may be interested in future webinars and deeper dives into this area. And this, of course, could be one of them. The benefits of change management could be one of them. So this section is about the upside and the downside avoidance of adopting change management. The CMROI perspective is kind of describing the percentage of the expected benefit that is directly tied to employees adopting and using the change. And there is a calculator available for this. There is actually a tool that you could use that's available that can help you describe that percentage, and also the elasticity of that percentage as well. So that's available. The second area is what we call SUP, which is the speed of adoption, the ultimate utilization, and the proficiency perspective. This is where you can measure change in terms of the adoption, that people, how fast do we want people to adopt the change, utilization, and the proficiency, the human factors that can drive the ROI. What are the avoidable costs and risks is another way of describing it. So it's yet another perspective to highlight the value of change management. You could also express the increase in the probability of success in applying change management. There's been a couple of organizations, McKinsey has done this kind of work that you could call on. At the basic level, if you can either describe it as the increased probability of success, or 1 minus the probability of failure. What would we do if we don't do change management? You can describe it either way. And I think the last point here is that make sure that it's the language that we are using. It's more powerful to talk about what we can achieve than what we do in change management. So let's keep this focused on what we can achieve. Implementation timeline is where we address when change management will be done. The trick here is to align this to the project timeline. And this shows how change management activities, this shows how change management activities map into existing project milestones. We show here that we are aligning to the project activities and not just shooting off in a different on a different agenda. And that's really important, that we align the timelines here with what's going on in the project. And what I've done is I've kind of mapped out a typical timeline. This is sort of a generic description for a project. And I've mapped to this, we can map to this the change management activities that we would typically do. In initiation, it's a scorecard, and we do the ROI calculator. It's the project health when we're coming into the planning and the best practice alignment. And as we move through the phases of the project, we can describe the activities that we're going to be doing that represent what we do as change management during the process of the project itself. So in this section, you're showing how all the change management activities, milestones, diagnostics, etc., align with the project timeline. So this is with you, project team, not on top of you, is the message that we're really delivering here. Good. So critical assumptions and risk assessment. This section here really gets into doing things like SWOT analysis and dependencies. And here it's important to be specific. And the reason why you want to do this is to show that you've thought about the issues that may be surrounding the change. And you could do various kinds of tools and tools and methods here. But you're really taking, what you're doing here is mapping out the complexity and the risk associated with the people side of change. You're calling that out. You may be highlighting some of the challenges on the technical side, or maybe it's a sponsorship engagement challenge, or managers getting engaged with the change. We could also be having problems with saturation. This change that we're trying to do, we've got it all worked out, but we're in an environment where people are really struggling because there's such a lot of change going on. And this section here is where you'd state up the, what assumptions are we making and what risks are there inherent in moving forward that may cause us to have to come back and modify our plans going forward. So some of the considerations, could be all sorts of things here. One of the biggest mistakes I've seen change managers make in the past, it was that they did not ask for enough. And this is about the conclusion. This is really what you're going to be driving at the conclusion and recommendation stage. It's asking what you need for success. I mean, think about all you've done here. You've connected the people to the results. You've defined the scope of the project, of the change management side of it, the milestones, the deliverables, the cost and the benefit. In the conclusion, it's when you've done all of that, you can be really confident to ask for what you need. It's about asking for the commitment, the authorization, the budget, resources, and this is where you're going to be doing it. It will be in this conclusion and recommendation section, and you should be confident to be able to do that if you've done that kind of analysis. Okay, so here's the agenda again. We talked about the 4 definitional pieces, if you like, of the business case from a change management perspective. We've talked about the 4 common objectives that and a lot of us have experienced that. And we've looked at 8 different sections in the business case structure that can help you create a really strong business case. Good. So just to remind you, there are some tools, there are resources available to you online, and there is, of course, coaching for those who would like that sort of assistance. There's some online tools that you can make use of, and these tools include templates and learning guides, a whole lot of things there that you could use. And of course, there is training available that includes modules that talk about the business case. There's a change management certification workshop. We've got one coming up on the 2nd or the 4th of June. I think we've only got about 1 place left on that one, I think, Nick. Advanced immersion workshop, we're teeing that up for the 3rd quarter of this year. And experienced practitioner program is also a place where we visit the case, and we're teeing that up for the 4th quarter. All right, so as I mentioned earlier, we're opening up the lines for you to indicate to us what aspects of today's webinar you would like to have more discussion on, possibly, or perhaps something else. So please let us know. This is so we can try to meet your needs, of course, what you would like to. There's so many topics we can discuss in change management. So what elements of change management would be of interest to you? So just chime those in, please, and we'll look to responding to those. If we're not getting anything, our next webinar is really going to be looking at the 3rd element of the fundamentals series, which is scheduled for the Monday, the 1st of June is our next webinar. The topic's another hot favorite because of the challenges change managers face every day. And that's, of course, the basics of change management. Where's the value of it? So we'll help you tell a simple and compelling story about why change management is necessary for projects to deliver results and achieve objectives. So looking forward to seeing you then. And of course, you could get more on the website. So cost risk analysis, yep, case study examples, step-by-step implementation of change. That almost sounds like something we could do in one of our community forums. Okay, some people still exploring ProSci. Okay, that's cool. There, you can go to the ProSci site, you can come to our site, you can see a lot about what's going on there. Cost benefit analysis, ROI tool. Okay, planning, sponsor, roadmaps, etc. Great, thank you for that. Thanks for that. Okay, good. So I guess, and I can see on the chat box, there were a couple of questions coming in. So Nicholas, I don't know if you've got any questions that have come in from the participants today. Let's see if we got a little bit of a Q&A session. Spend a few minutes just attending to see if we can answer some questions and discuss some things.
Certainly. Certainly. Well, there's been quite a few questions, so I'm just going to clump them up more or less into these themed questions.
Okay.
One that's cropped up quite a bit is, what happens if there is no project documentation, but you have been recruited as a change manager? So when you were referring to the project documentation, obviously you were referring to it in the context of, oh, you can borrow this from your project documentation, you can borrow that from your project manager, and so on and so forth. Mm-hmm. What do you do in situations when you simply don't have that?
Well, I'm assuming that in this case, you're not the project manager, okay? You've been brought on to try and build, you know, to try and attend to the people side of the change. And maybe the project manager isn't there, or the project manager hasn't had a chance. We're right at the beginning of the change. We can't really start operating well until we've defined what that change is. What we could do as change managers, given that we've got the reach and the time, is we could play the role of facilitating that discussion, of trying to flesh out what the change is or should be. And of course, there's many ways in which I've seen many ways in which this is done. It could, of course, be group type meetings, but it could be individual sessions, especially with executives, to try and flesh out what they believe the change should be. But ultimately, it's not going to be our call to define the change. That's a risk if we try to do that. That should ultimately end up being in the form of, let's say, a project charter. And our role as change managers is we could facilitate the discussion around that. But unless we're actually given that as a project management role that we have to play, we have to work the people towards that, work the leaders towards that.
So in that instance, would it be fair to say that even if you're a project manager or not even really related to the project management per se, having some change management competency would drive results? Oh,
absolutely. I think, you know, one of my favorite sayings when I'm, you know, working with practitioners, I always say all change managers should know project management, but all project managers should know change management too. I mean, we're working or should be as two roles in a project, working very closely with each other. I mean, I've been emphasizing this in the business case too, that ultimately this business case is going to be integrated in many ways, in milestones, in timelines, etc. We're integrating the work we're doing with the rest of the project work. It can only help if your project managers really understand something about change management. They know what it's about. And of course, we need to know project management too, to understand what they're expecting to get from us as change managers.
All right, another question here. Why have the strategy separate from the business case?
Well, because often what happens is, you know, if you look at what the strategy is aiming to get to, the business case is really asking for the approval. So please give us the resources to be able to do things like build a strategy. You know, and strategies, of course, are iterative. You're going to come out with you may, at the time of constructing the business case, have an overall strategy, which is a result of some analysis that you've had some time to do. But your business case is really asking for the rest of the work that needs to be done. Your strategy is the approach that we're going to use to build change, you know, to have the change happen in the people and the organization. It's the approach. Your business case is actually linking that approach to results. So I must be able to link that strategy to getting something for that. So how does the strategy help us achieve the results that we're actually looking and aiming to achieve with this change? There's slightly different focus and purpose there.
All right. Another question. Is the
Hmm.
finance team not responsible for the cost benefit analysis? Why does some of that responsibility land on the change manager's shoulders?
Well, I mean, it would be great if the finance team is looking at their organization and have already built in the measurement systems that can measure the relative effectiveness of people adopting change and delivering. If they've got those kind of productivity models that they could help us use. It's been my experience that they don't typically have that. That typically they're looking at expenditure budgets, and on the one end, and maybe another section of the finance is looking at the revenue side, or and or the cost side, and they can produce those numbers very cogently. But what we've got to do as change managers is dig into that and say what element of that is related to people doing something differently. How much of this saving or revenue gain, or how much of that benefit, that outcome, is linked to the people? And that really is something we should be very good at doing and identifying. We would work with the finance people, and if you found finance people that could describe it that way, well, that's just made your job so much easier. It's not been my experience that I've found that too often.
Okay, another question coming through. This one's a bit of a doozy. Tom, what would you
Hmm.
say is the biggest challenge in getting project managers to understand the importance of organizational change management
That's a good one.
in your experience?
Yeah, that's a good one. I think it starts with the getting them to realize the connection. It's really about the connection that, they've done a fantastic job of figuring out all the things that need to be done so that this change will actually be implemented, probably by a particular date with a particular budget, etc. And that's great. That's essential. Without that, as we discussed earlier, without knowing what the change is, I can't even start to think about how we're going to manage it. But what I think the key thing for us to do is to help them see the connection that making the change and linking the people to that change, and what role they can play to actually make that change come alive is something that I think is the key thing that we should be helping them see. And when they see that connection, when they get it, when they finally get it, and they understand that, you know what, as a project manager, my success is actually dependent on how the change manager could help me with their planning of how we're going to get the people on board, how we're going to bring the leaders to lead the change. Then when they get that, when that light switches on, then typically they become very strong allies, and they understand that we're in this together. Okay, you're going to help get the people dressed up to go somewhere. I'm going to help them go there. So it's about the two working together.
Another follow-up question.
Yeah,
This one is related to the answers you gave previously around separating strategy and the business case.
sure.
With that said, can change be achieved with no people, budget, or strategy at all?
Well, I think yes. I mean, ultimately, I think many of us have seen changes that have been implemented without any regard to the people. Of course, we don't normally get everything we expected. We sometimes get what we didn't expect. It could take longer. We may come back next year and do release two, etc. But making change without bringing the people on board may get some results. I mean, there may be some benefit inherent in the change itself without the people. But I think that's not what we're trying to achieve in organizations. I've never come across an executive that has said, you know what, we're going to put the thing in. I don't really care how much we get out of this, as long as we've just gone through the motions, we've ticked the box, we've done the thing. That's good enough for me. I've never found that. I've always found them very passionate about making sure that the change actually achieves the objectives it's set out to do. So yes, you could run a change without change management, of course. I think the there's lots of them around, and there's many examples that all of us can think about and remember. But it's doing change management is about getting results, and that's the focus. It's really about getting results, and this business case is the place where we're going to show in a formal, structured way how we're going to get those results utilizing the people.
All right, and I think the final question for today, as
Yep.
I do see time is very quickly ticking by,
It's ticking
and
by,
people
but
have
I
dinner to
really
get
love
to,
these
right?
questions. I love the
Yeah.
questions. Could
So,
discuss this for hours.
final question.
Yeah.
Is there a business case for organizational change management maturity? So in other words, would you be using the same process as you've described here, building the case for CM, but for building CM maturity in an entire organization?
Oh, yeah, very much so. Very much so. There's been quite a lot of research that's been done on that, that shows very clearly that as we build maturity in change management in an organization, it delivers more, better results and more sustainably going forward. There's no question. The research is pretty clear on that. And we really tackle that in a number of contexts. There's a boot camp that we run. We call this enterprise change management. What you're referring to is actually getting the whole enterprise to move forward. It's about deploying change management as a capability in the organization, which of course is a change, which of course is a project, of course. But it's really something that we focus on specifically to answer that question. How do I get the organization to build its maturity, and what benefits can I expect from that? The research is clear, it's available. Anyone wanting to see that, please chime it up to us, give us your details, and we'll get that information off to you. It's definitely a place to go to. Thanks, Nick.
All right. So I guess we'll just have to close the questions for now, as we are rapidly running out of time.
Yeah.
But if anyone has any questions or would like to engage further on this topic or any of the related topics around, I'm just chatting into the box, my email address. Please feel free to contact me. We can always arrange a coaching session with Tom or with anyone of our experienced facilitators and practitioners across the globe. Tom, if you'd like to close the session for us.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thanks for the privilege, the opportunity to be with you again this afternoon. Looking forward to seeing you again at a future webinar, at a future community forums that we run. Just love to look at how we can help make this a better world by managing change better. And I think the business case is one of the key components. So I'm glad I've had the opportunity to share this kind of these insights and what I've seen from experience. Looking forward to seeing you guys again soon, and see you on our next webinar. In the meantime, stay safe, stay well. See you soon.